2:17 on a Thursday afternoon, and the manila folder landed on my keyboard just as I finished reviewing the quarterly compliance report. Grayson Ford, Vice President of Human Resources, settled into the chair opposite my desk with the expression of someone who believed he held all the power in the room. His cologne was aggressive, something marketed to men who confused expense with taste, and it mixed poorly with the recycled air from the building's ancient ventilation system. He asked if I had reviewed the employee handbook recently, specifically the section on time management and productivity standards. Of all the conversations I anticipated having that day, a pop quiz on company policy ranked somewhere below discussing the weather. He opened the folder and I saw my name printed across the top of what appeared to be a detailed log. Dates, times, durations, all meticulously recorded in a spreadsheet that someone had clearly spent hours compiling. 13 bathroom visits over the past 7 business days, he informed me, each averaging between 5 and 9 minutes. At my current compensation rate of $87,000 annually, he had calculated that each visit cost Luxel Dynamics approximately $5.23 in lost work time. Annually, this represented nearly $3,400 in what he termed unproductive expenditure. I blinked at him, processing the absurdity of what I was hearing. Someone in this organization had been timing my bathroom breaks. Someone had been logging them. Someone had performed mathematical calculations to determine the precise financial impact of my bladder. The overhead lights hummed their familiar fluorescent drone while my computer monitor displayed 17 unread emails, most of them from international partners in Singapore and Tokyo regarding the certification protocol I had spent 19 months developing. 19 months of navigating the complexities of the Asia-Pacific Economic Cooperation Digital Trade Agreement, building relationships with regulatory officials across 8 countries, and establishing Luxel Dynamics as a trusted entity in markets worth $240 million in projected revenue. I asked him to clarify, was he actually documenting my bathroom usage and assigning it a dollar value? He straightened his shoulders, clearly prepared for this question. At my level of compensation, he explained, the company had certain expectations regarding efficient use of work hours. Excessive personal time, regardless of the reason, represented a pattern that management could not overlook. Excessive personal time. I repeated those words slowly, letting them hang in the air between us. He nodded, satisfied that I was finally understanding the gravity of the situation. My employment with Luxel Dynamics was being terminated, effective immediately, for violation of productivity standards as outlined in Section 7.3 of the Employee Handbook. Security would escort me from the building within the hour, and he wanted to be perfectly clear that any requests for references would be declined based on my documented performance issues. 19 months of work. 19 months of early morning video conferences with officials in Seoul and Jakarta who operated on time zones that required me to be online at 5 a.m. 19 months of memorizing the labyrinthine requirements of cross-border data harmonization protocols that literally no one else in this building had bothered to learn. 19 months of becoming the singular point of contact between Luxel Dynamics and the regulatory bodies that would determine whether we could legally operate in the fastest-growing economic region on the planet. And I was being fired for urinating. I requested the termination documentation in writing. He slid a letter across my desk, laser-printed on company letterhead, dated that very day. Failure to maintain productivity standards was listed as the cause, with no specific mention of bathrooms, but the subtext screamed from every carefully chosen word. His signature slashed across the bottom in aggressive blue ink, as though he were signing a victory proclamation. A knock on the door frame announced the arrival of building security. Terrence, mid-40s, with kind eyes that currently would not meet mine. I had helped him troubleshoot his company email 6 months ago when IT told him it would be a 3-day wait. He had brought me coffee the next morning as thanks. Now he stood in my doorway, radio crackling softly on his belt, apologizing in a voice barely above a whisper. He murmured that he did not know what this was about, that it did not seem right. I told him I appreciated that and that none of this was his fault. A cardboard box materialized from somewhere, probably kept on hand for exactly these occasions, and I began the humiliating process of packing my professional life while Grayson Ford watched with apparent satisfaction. The framed photo of my nephew graduated into the box first. A small jade plant named Murphy that had survived 3 office relocations followed. A coffee mug declaring world's okayest compliance officer went in next. A gift from my colleague Deanna, who understood that compliance work was 90% reading dense regulatory documents and 10% explaining why we could not just figure it out as we go. What did not go into that box, because it had never physically existed in this office, was the network of relationships I had built across the Asia-Pacific region. The direct phone line to Kenji Yamamoto at the Japanese Ministry of Economy, Trade and Industry belonged to me personally. The encrypted communication channel with Lee Soo-jin at the Korean Personal Information Protection Commission listed my personal credentials, not Luxel Dynamics. The authorization codes for the APEC Cross-Border Privacy Rules certification portal existed in exactly one location. A password manager secured by biometric authentication that only I could access. My laptop, being collected by an IT technician who looked about 19 years old and deeply uncomfortable, contained encryption keys that unlocked access to 19 months of technical documentation, compliance protocols and certification materials. Within 72 hours, Luxel would discover that those keys were not stored on any company server. They were stored in my head. The elevator descended 23 floors in uncomfortable silence. Terrence stood beside me studying his shoes while the numbers ticked downward. The lobby floor felt cold through my heels. Polished concrete designed to look expensive but maintaining no warmth whatsoever. The revolving door pushed me out into March air that smelled of rain and exhaust fumes and possibility. Security cameras tracked my exit at 3:04 p.m., recording the precise moment that Luxel Dynamics' entire Asia-Pacific expansion strategy walked out of the building forever, carrying a cardboard box containing a plant named Murphy and absolutely nothing else that mattered. If you have ever worked for someone who measured your humanity in decimal points, who tracked your biological functions like you were a machine in need of optimization, I want to hear about it. Drop a comment below. Hit subscribe and make sure to like this video so others can find it too. Because what happened over the next 6 weeks taught Grayson Ford that $5.23 is nothing compared to the actual cost of undervaluing the irreplaceable. I did not drive home. Instead, I drove to a cafe near the waterfront, ordered an overpriced matcha latte and opened my laptop. The job search could wait because first I needed to understand exactly what Grayson Ford had just done to his company. The Asia-Pacific launch was scheduled for April 22nd, 38 days away. Luxel Dynamics had announced it to shareholders, promised it to the board and pre-sold enterprise packages to 22 corporate clients across Japan, South Korea, Singapore, Australia and New Zealand. Combined projected first-year revenue from these markets, $240 million. I knew that number because I had sat in the conference room when the CFO presented it to investors, my presence required as the compliance architect who would make those numbers legally achievable. My personal email account showed 63 unread messages from the past 2 weeks alone. I had used my personal email for all sensitive communications because Luxel's IT infrastructure was, ironically, not compliant with the security standards required to discuss compliance matters. Regulatory bodies do not appreciate discussing data protection protocols over unsecured channels. Message after message from certification authorities. The Japanese ministry requesting final clarification on data localization requirements. The Korean Commission asking about consent mechanism audits. The Singaporean authority scheduling a final technical review that required my physical presence, or at least my digital signature on official documents. The APEC Secretariat sending reminder after reminder about the upcoming Article 8 assessment that only the designated certification lead could submit. Every single message addressed me. Zariah Bennett. Not Luxel Dynamics. Not the compliance department. Me. Because I had spent 19 months becoming the human being that the Asia-Pacific regulatory apparatus recognized and trusted. My phone buzzed. A text from Deanna, my former colleague in product development. What happened? Grayson just sent all staff saying you resigned for personal reasons. Are you okay? Personal reasons. Of course. He would not want to explain the bathroom spreadsheet to the entire company. He would not want to admit that he had terminated the only person in the organization who understood what cross-border privacy rules certification actually meant. So personal reasons, it was as if my bladder were a lifestyle choice I had decided to pursue elsewhere. I did not respond yet. First, I pulled up the project timeline I had built over 19 months. The one I had saved to my personal cloud storage because Luxel's documentation practices were, putting it mildly, inadequate. March 28th. Final certification documentation submission to Apex Secretariat. April 3rd. Technical infrastructure review with Korean authorities. April 8th. Data protection impact assessment review with Japanese ministry. April 15th. Joint certification authority meeting requiring authorized representative presence. April 19th. Final certification sign-off requiring my specific digital signature. April 22nd. Official Asia-Pacific market launch. Without the March 28th submission, there would be no certification. Without certification, there would be no legal basis to process customer data across borders. Without legal data processing, there would be no market launch. Without the market launch, there would be no $240 million. Without that revenue, there would be extremely difficult conversations with investors who had been explicitly promised growth numbers that suddenly were impossible to achieve. Here was what Grayson Ford did not understand, what no one in that building understood because no one had ever bothered to ask. The APEC Cross-Border Privacy Rules certification requires continuity of authorized personnel. The regulators do not just review technical systems. They review the people responsible for those systems. When I completed the certification lead designation 20 months earlier, I became the legally recognized point of contact between Luxel Dynamics and every regulatory body across 8 countries. That designation cannot be transferred with the memo. It requires a minimum 90-day transition period, comprehensive background checks by each participating nation's regulatory authority, fresh authorization from the APEC Secretariat, and explicit approval from each country's designated privacy official. 13 months ago, Kenji Yamamoto told me what happened when another American company tried to swap out their certification lead mid-process. Continuity of representation, he had explained in his precise English, is not merely procedural preference. It is fundamental indicator of organizational stability and commitment to compliance principles. That company's certification was denied. They reapplied 18 months later with a new compliance team and eventually gained approval, but they lost their entire first-year market window. I had taken detailed notes during that conversation. Grayson Ford had not fired an employee. He had severed Luxel Dynamics' legal ability to operate in Asia-Pacific markets worth $250 million. My matcha latte had gone cold. Outside the cafe windows, rain began to fall, turning the waterfront into a gray impressionist painting. My phone buzzed again. A LinkedIn notification informed me that Grayson Ford had endorsed me for attention to detail. I laughed loud enough that the barista looked up from her phone. I took a screenshot because some ironies deserve to be preserved. The first week passed quietly. I updated my resume, reached out to contacts at competing firms, and deliberately avoided checking my work email, which had been deactivated approximately 90 minutes after my termination. I knew this because I had tried to log in out of curiosity, only to be met with an account not found error. Swift and thorough, exactly what you would expect from a company that prided itself on efficiency. Day 8 brought the first crack. Deanna called at 11 a.m., her voice tight with controlled panic. She asked what I had done to the certification portal. I told her I had not done anything to it. I had built it, but I had not sabotaged it. She explained that no one could access the compliance dashboard. IT had been trying since yesterday morning, escalating through 3 levels of support, and Grayson was, in her words, losing his entire mind. The administrative credentials were tied to my corporate identity, I explained. When that identity was deactivated upon termination, the credentials stopped working. Had no one thought to transfer system access before escorting me out? Silence on the line, which told me everything I needed to know. I asked if someone had documented the admin transfer protocol. Deanna explained that IT had opened a priority ticket, but the Apex Secretariat needed to verify any credential changes with the authorized representative before approving system modifications. The authorized representative being me. Grayson had been on a conference call with someone in Singapore for over 2 hours. I could picture it perfectly. Grayson, sweating through his expensive dress shirt, trying to explain to a Singaporean data protection official why the authorized representative had been terminated for excessive bathroom breaks. The cultural chasm alone would be insurmountable. Singapore takes worker protections seriously. They would not understand. They would not want to understand. I asked how that call was going. Deanna said he had been on hold for 93 minutes, being transferred between departments. Each time he reached someone who sounded promising, they asked for his authorization credentials, found he did not have them and transferred him to another department. They were looking for someone with actual authority, someone whose name appeared on the official authorization documents. She reminded me that the certification submission deadline was in 20 days. I told her I was aware. She started to say something about what would happen if they missed it, and I finished the thought for her. They would not just miss the launch date, they would miss the entire certification window. The next available window was October, 6 months away. Enterprise clients would invoke their exit clauses because every contract contained regulatory contingency language. Investors would demand explanations for the $240 million shortfall. Ann Grayson would need to explain to the board why he fired the only person who could have prevented the entire catastrophe. She asked if I could come back if they offered me my job. I had been fired for using the bathroom, I reminded her. Even if I wanted to return, which I absolutely did not, there was a 90-day minimum transition period for certification lead changes. They did not have 90 days. They had 20. She thought there must be something they could do. There was not. Grayson had made certain of that when he signed my termination letter. Every signature has consequences. He just never read the fine print on this particular document. I told Deanna I was sorry and I meant it. She had never been anything but supportive. She had celebrated when I received my certification designation, brought me Thai food during late-night audit preparations, and defended my budget requests in meetings where Grayson questioned whether compliance really needed that much funding. But this was not my problem anymore. This was not my responsibility. This was consequences arriving right on schedule. The cascade accelerated. Day 11 brought a formal rejection from the Apex Secretariat regarding Luxol's emergency request to appoint a replacement representative. The rejection letter, which Deanna forwarded to me in violation of approximately 12 company policies, cited insufficient documentation of continuity protocols and concerns regarding organizational stability given recent personnel changes. They requested a formal explanation of circumstances surrounding my departure. Grayson declined to provide one. Day 13 saw the certification portal generating automated security alerts. Without an authorized administrator to acknowledge them, the alerts escalated through the system until they triggered a critical security flag that locked out all secondary users. 23 employees lost access to compliance documentation they needed for daily operations. IT opened an emergency ticket requiring authorization from the compliance lead. There was no compliance lead. Day 15 brought the first enterprise client withdrawal. Sakura Technologies, a Japanese AI development firm with a 3-year contract worth $8.7 million annually, formally invoked their exit clause. Their legal team cited material concerns regarding regulatory compliance status and inability to meet contractual obligations. The exit clause entitled them to full refund of implementation fees already paid. $1.2 million wired back to Tokyo within 7 business days. Day 16 saw Luxol's stock price drop 11% on news of the Sakura withdrawal. Financial analysts began asking pointed questions. 3 firms downgraded their rating from buy to hold. 1 downgraded directly to sell. According to Deanna, Grayson had not left the office in 2 days. His Slack status showed as active continuously, a green dot that never flickered, a man watching his career implode in real time and unable to look away. I tracked the metrics with clinical detachment. Stock price down 14% and continuing to fall. 6 of 22 pre-sold enterprise clients had formally withdrawn. 9 more were under active review, which was corporate speak for lawyers examining exit clause language. Certification status remained stalled with March 28 deadline now 9 days away and no authorized representative in place to complete submission. Legal exposure mounted exponentially. Each withdrawn client represented potential breach of contract claims if Luxol could not deliver the Asia-Pacific access they had been promised. The numbers told a story of systematic collapse. Each percentage point represented consequences. Each withdrawal represented a domino falling. At the center of it all sat a bathroom spreadsheet and a man who thought $5.23 was too high a price for human dignity. Day 18 brought a screenshot from Deanna. Luxol's internal Slack had a channel called Company Announcements, where leadership posted official updates. The latest post came from Grayson himself. He wrote that he wanted to address certain rumors. and that the Asia-Pacific launch timeline was being strategically adjusted to ensure they delivered the highest quality product. He called it a planned recalibration rather than a crisis. He claimed my departure was unrelated to their certification status and wished me well in my future endeavors. Unrelated. I read that word 5 times. The Apex Secretariat had explicitly cited my departure in their rejection letter. The certification authorities had put the entire process on hold specifically because I was gone. Client contracts were being terminated because regulatory compliance could not be guaranteed. But according to Grayson, these facts were unrelated. Day 19 brought an email to my personal address. Not from Luxel but from Kenji Yamamoto himself. He expressed disappointment at losing a valued professional contact and stated that the circumstances as they had been reported to him were deeply concerning from both professional and ethical standpoints. Should I find myself seeking new opportunities, he would be pleased to provide a recommendation. The regulatory community values individuals who understand that compliance is not merely bureaucratic formality but fundamental commitment to protecting user rights and privacy. He hoped our professional paths would cross again under more favorable circumstances. I printed that email. Framed it. Some endorsements are worth infinitely more than LinkedIn notifications. Day 20 and my phone rang with a number I recognized. Luxel Dynamics main switchboard. I was conducting a video interview at that precise moment with Cornerstone Data Solutions, one of Luxel's primary competitors in the enterprise data management sector. The hiring manager, a sharp woman named Olivia Reyes, had just finished explaining that they were actively seeking someone to lead their own Asia-Pacific expansion initiative. Someone with existing regulatory relationships and proven certification experience. My name, she said, had come up repeatedly when they consulted their contacts across Singapore, Tokyo, and Seoul, asking who the best compliance professionals in the industry were. Multiple regulatory officials mentioned me specifically. My phone buzzed. Luxel Dynamics. Olivia noticed and asked if I needed to take the call. I told her it was not important. The phone rang 3 more times during that interview. I declined each call. My phone accumulated voicemail notifications that I ignored with satisfaction. The interview concluded with Olivia promising to send a formal offer letter by end of business day. Then I listened to the voicemails. The first message was curt. Grayson's voice, controlled and professional. This was Grayson Ford from Luxel Dynamics. We needed to discuss the certification timeline. Please return this call at your earliest convenience. The second message ran longer, his voice tighter, the professional veneer cracking. He did not know what game I thought I was playing, but the certification authorities were refusing to proceed without me. This situation was affecting the entire organization. It was bigger than whatever personal issues I believed I had. I needed to call him back immediately. The third message revealed a Grayson Ford the first had never encountered. Soraya, please. His voice was raw, stripped completely of its usual condescension. The board is meeting tomorrow. They are asking questions I cannot answer. The stock is down 23%. Sakura walked. Hanwha is threatening to follow. Legal is saying we have massive exposure on the prepaid contracts. I need you to tell me how to fix this. I know we had our disagreements, but this is bigger than both of us. Please call me back. I saved that voicemail. Made myself a cup of tea. Sat on my couch and thought carefully about what he had said. Our disagreements. As if being fired for urinary frequency was a philosophical disagreement. As if being escorted out by security after 19 months of essential work was a minor interpersonal conflict. He still did not understand. He thought this was about him and me. He thought if he apologized sufficiently, made the right offer, said the right words, I would sweep in and fix everything. But this was never about revenge. This was about consequences. Natural, inevitable consequences of decisions made by someone who never bothered to understand what they were destroying. I did not call him back. Now I need to pause here and ask, if you have ever watched someone realize that the person they dismissed was actually holding everything together, tell me about it in the comments. What did their face look like when understanding finally arrived? If you are enjoying this story, please hit subscribe and like so you do not miss what happened when the board discovered the truth about that bathroom spreadsheet. Day 21 brought a formal inquiry from the Apex Secretariat to Luxel's legal department. They requested comprehensive documentation regarding my termination. Specifically, was the departure voluntary or involuntary? If involuntary, what cause was cited? Standard due diligence, the letter explained, before any new representative could be considered. According to Deanna, Grayson spent 6 hours with legal counsel trying to craft a response that was technically accurate but did not mention bathrooms. They eventually settled on mutual agreement regarding role alignment and professional development opportunities. The Apex Secretariat responded within 4 hours. Their records showed I had been designated as a long-term strategic hire in Luxel's original certification application. They requested clarification on what had changed regarding role alignment in the past 19 months. Day 22 brought the board meeting. I was not present, obviously, but Deanna was taking notes as part of her product development role. She texted me a running commentary throughout. I have since supplemented her information with details from subsequent SEC filings and financial press coverage. 9 a.m. and the board convened. 14 members present, including 5 independent directors and 4 investor representatives. 9:12 a.m. and Grayson presented his recovery plan. According to Deanna, this involved a PowerPoint presentation containing 23 slides and phrases like strategic personnel optimization and temporary timeline recalibration. Lots of corporate vocabulary. Very few actual solutions. 9:37 a.m. and an investor representative asked about the Article 8 certification status. Grayson attempted to explain. Deanna texted that he was visibly sweating, his shirt collar darkening. 9:52 a.m. and an independent director asked why the authorized representative was terminated. Grayson mentioned performance concerns and attendance issues. The director requested specifics. Grayson hesitated. 10:08 a.m. and someone on the board apparently had experience with Asia-Pacific labor law. They asked specifically about the nature of these attendance concerns. Was the termination properly documented? Did legal review the termination before execution? What was the specific cause? 10:14 a.m. and Grayson admitted it was about bathroom breaks. Deanna texted that the silence in the conference room lasted exactly 37 seconds. He counted. Someone's pen clicked. Someone else's coffee cup clinked against a saucer. No one spoke. 10:17 a.m. and the board requested an immediate recess. What Grayson did not know, what he could not have known because he never paid attention to anything that did not appear on a spreadsheet, was that 2 of the independent directors had extensive Asia-Pacific business experience. One had worked in Singapore for 9 years. They understood, in a way Grayson never would, exactly how catastrophic his decision appeared from an Asia-Pacific regulatory perspective. Asia-Pacific cultures do not have a framework for firing someone over bathroom usage. It is not merely illegal under most countries' labor laws. It is incomprehensible. It suggests a fundamental disregard for human dignity that calls into question every other compliance claim a company might make. If a company monitors and punishes employees for biological functions, what else would they do? What data would they collect? What boundaries would they respect? What protections would they honor? 10:41 a.m. and the board reconvened. Deanna texted that she had never seen Grayson look so pale. He looked, she said, like he might actually pass out. 10:55 a.m. and the board announced that Grayson Ford was being placed on immediate administrative leave pending a comprehensive review of HR practices and decision-making protocols. An interim VP of Human Resources was appointed, a woman named Catherine Okonkwo, who had been my secondary contact on several compliance matters and who had never once questioned my bathroom habits. Her first directive: contact Zariah Bennett immediately. 11:18 a.m. and my phone rang. The voice on the other end was measured, professional, and belonged to someone I had met exactly 3 times in 19 months despite my work being critical to company strategy. Robert Chambers, CEO of Luxel Dynamics, a man who apparently had more important things to do than learn the names of the people holding his company together. He wanted to begin by apologizing. On behalf of the company, the board, and himself personally. What happened to me was inexcusable. They were taking it extremely seriously. Changes were being implemented immediately. I told him I appreciated the apology. He understood I might have concerns about returning, and those concerns were entirely valid. But he wanted to be transparent about their situation. Without my direct involvement, they could not complete the certification process. The authorities had made that abundantly clear. The timeline had made it clear. The client withdrawals had made it clear. He was prepared to offer me a consulting contract at 4 times my previous salary, plus a completion bonus of $150,000, plus full benefits restoration, plus a formal letter of apology to be placed in my permanent personnel file alongside complete expungement of the termination record. 4 times my salary. A $150,000 bonus. The kind of number that makes your breath catch. The kind of number designed to make you reconsider everything. I told him I was flattered. Genuinely. But I had already accepted a position with Cornerstone Data Solutions. I was starting Monday. The silence on the line stretched 7 full seconds. I could hear him breathing, processing, recalculating. Cornerstone, he repeated. Their competitor Cornerstone. Their competitor Cornerstone, I confirmed. They had offered me double my Luxel salary, full autonomy over their Asia-Pacific compliance program, and as many bathroom breaks as biological necessity required. They thought it was strange that I needed to specify that last point. I had to explain why I was asking. He asked me to reconsider. Please. He understood I was angry. I had every right to be angry, but surely they could find some arrangement. Perhaps a part-time consulting role? Evenings and weekends? Whatever worked with my new position. They just needed enough involvement to satisfy certification requirements. I told him I was not angry. I was simply unavailable. The same way I was unavailable when Grayson decided my bladder function was a liability to company profits. The difference was that now the unavailability was permanent and deliberate. He said the board would authorize any reasonable compensation. I should name a number. Any number. It was not about compensation, I explained. It was about the fact that his VP of Human Resources fired a critical employee for being human, and not a single person in the organization caught it. Not HR compliance. Not legal counsel. Not him. If it had been anyone else, anyone who did not happen to hold the keys to their entire Asia-Pacific strategy, that termination would have stood. Grayson would still be calculating cost per flush metrics. Some other employee would be crying in their car, wondering how they were going to pay rent after being fired for biological necessity. He said he understood, though I was not convinced he did. I told him that what I had witnessed at Luxel was a systemic failure of values. Systemic failures are exactly what compliance auditors are trained to identify. Even if I wanted to return and I did not, I was not certain I could help them. The Asia-Pacific regulators were not just evaluating their technical systems anymore. They were evaluating their judgment. And Luxel had given them substantial reason to doubt it. Another silence, longer this time. He asked if there was nothing they could offer. Nothing at all. I told him he could offer me Grayson Ford's termination letter. I would like to frame it next to my own. I ended the call before he could respond. That felt petty, I admit. Petty in a way I had tried to avoid throughout this entire situation. But some pettiness is earned. Some pettiness serves as a pressure valve preventing you from saying something far worse. Besides, I knew the letter would arrive eventually whether I requested it or not. The Asia-Pacific launch did not happen on April 22nd. It did not happen in April at all. Luxel Dynamics missed the certification window entirely, exactly as I had predicted. The next available window opened in October, 6 months away, an eternity in technology markets. By then, 14 of the 22 enterprise clients had withdrawn, citing regulatory uncertainty and breach of contract. The stock had fallen 37% from its pre-termination high. 5 class action lawsuits had been filed by shareholders alleging misrepresentation of Asia-Pacific expansion readiness and material omissions in public filings. Grayson Ford was formally terminated. His exit paperwork cited strategic misalignment and critical failures in personnel management judgment. He found employment eventually, regional account manager at a mid-sized software firm in Phoenix. No direct reports. No spreadsheets to maintain. Just him, a territory map, and quarterly sales quotas that someone else established. Middle of the organization chart. Middle of nowhere. Exactly where he belonged. My first week at Cornerstone Data Solutions brought meetings with Kenji Yamamoto, who turned out to be even more delightful in person than he was over email and phone calls. He introduced me to his colleagues across the Japanese regulatory apparatus, vouched for my expertise, and quietly mentioned that Luxel's certification application had been flagged for enhanced scrutiny going forward. Such unfortunate situation, he said in his precise English, his expression carefully neutral. They had promising application before all this difficulty. Very unfortunate, I agreed. Cornerstone completed its Asia-Pacific certification in August, 3 months ahead of schedule. I was quoted in 5 industry publications, always identified as former Luxel Dynamics compliance architect Zariah Bennett. But mostly I did not think about Luxel at all. I had better priorities. A team to build. A compliance program to design. And bathroom breaks to take whenever biology required, without anyone calculating the cost. On the day Cornerstone officially launched in Asia-Pacific markets, one final message arrived from Deanna. She congratulated me on the successful launch. Said she was happy things worked out. Then mentioned that Grayson's name had appeared in the comments section of an industry article about corporate compliance failures. Someone asked whatever happened to the executive who fired his compliance lead over bathroom breaks. Nobody responded. Apparently nobody remembered him anymore. I read her message, smiled, and closed my phone. The thing about being essential is that people rarely notice until you are gone. The thing about bathroom breaks is that everyone needs them. Even the people who think they are too important to acknowledge basic human biology. Even the people who believe humanity can be calculated in decimal points. $5.23. That was what Grayson Ford calculated each of my bathroom breaks cost his company. What he failed to calculate was the cost of everything else. The relationships that took 19 months to build. The expertise that took years to develop. The institutional knowledge that existed nowhere except inside my head. The trust that regulatory officials placed in me personally, not in the company name on my business card. Some lessons cost exactly $5.23. Others cost approximately $89 million in lost market value, 14 destroyed client relationships, 5 shareholder lawsuits, and 1 career that would never recover its trajectory. My lesson came in the form of a 60% salary increase, a senior leadership position, a team that respects me, and a coffee mug that says, "Compliance protects everyone." I think I got the better education. If this story resonated with you, if you have ever been underestimated, dismissed, reduced to numbers on a spreadsheet by someone who never understood your actual value, I want you to do something for me. Subscribe to this channel so you never miss another story like this one. Hit the like button to help others find it. Leave a comment telling me about a time when someone learned the hard way that you were more important than they realized. I read every single comment. Your stories remind me that we are not alone in these experiences. That we are not crazy for feeling hurt when our humanity is reduced to productivity metrics. Because at the end of the day, the people who calculate your worth in bathroom breaks will never understand your true value. But the people who do understand will find you. They will hire you. They will respect you. And they will never, ever track your trips to the restroom. Some things cannot be measured in dollars and cents. My time at Luxel Dynamics taught me that in the most expensive way possible. Grayson Ford's termination letter, framed next to my own on my office wall at Cornerstone, reminds me of it every single day. Not everyone gets to witness the moment when consequences arrive. Not everyone gets to see the exact price of their own dignity. But I did. And it was worth every single bathroom break.